Okay, so you're growing up in Miami, and you started getting into fights early on.
Oh yeah, lots of
Like
fights.
when were the first fist fights starting to occur?
If you ask my dad, they were happening since I was in daycare. Under his tutelage. On Saturdays, they used to have like the kung fu marathons. I don't know if you remember those.
Mhm.
They'd have them everywhere, and that's the only thing that could get me to stand still. I was very hyper as a kid, extremely hyper. So he discovered the kung fu movies worked on me. Kung fu movies and powdered donuts. And that was a Saturday marathon. I'd sit there and just watch kung fu movies until I'd go to sleep. And then on Monday, I'd go and I'd replicate those moves, and I started getting into fights. I don't recall any fights that I ever had at that age, but my dad said by the time I was like 4 or 5 years old, I had been kicked out of like 4 different daycares in like 1 year. So I must have been causing some type of trouble. But the fights I remember is a little bit older, like 8, 9 years old, around that time, me getting into some more serious fights.
Okay, but the fights kept progressing,
Yes.
and at one point, someone pulled a knife on you in elementary
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, this is I had just gotten back from Peru, and I had made some friends in the neighborhood, and we were going for a bike ride, and one of my friends knew like the older kids in the neighborhood, and they were like in the parking lot behind the fence. And he said hi to a couple of them and said what's up, and then one of them called me over, was like, hey, let me ask you something. And I was like kind of stupid and naive, and I got closer, and when I got closer, he reached his hand through the bar, and he brought me in like this, and he took out the knife, and he told me to jump off the bike. Since I was on the other side of the bar, I wasn't that scared. I was still scared, but I was like, nah, I could get out of the situation. So I just pushed myself off the bar, got on my bike, and fucking hauled ass out of there. And just so happens, maybe like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months later, I ended up running into the same kid in school, and we ended up having a nice little um fist fight.
Okay,
Yes.
you beat his ass.
I got my shots, and I definitely got. He was maybe, I don't know, like 3 years older than me, so he was definitely a little bigger than me, a little stronger than me. But I definitely got in more hits than he got in. I caught him with a couple shots.
Okay, so you're growing up, and around this time, you were like stealing radios and stuff like that. I mean, were you getting arrested, or it was just like little things that you were kind of
I
getting away with?
First time I got arrested, I think I was like 14 years old. So at this time, no, I hadn't been arrested. I wasn't part of the system yet. I was just like doing dumb kid stuff. And my poor mom was out there busting her ass as hard as she could. So she couldn't really have that much hands on me at the time. My aunts, they would be there as much as they could for me, but I was wild and rambunctious, and I had a lot of like, oh, fucking piss and vinegar inside of me, a lot of rage. And I didn't want to be controlled, and the older I got, the more rage I had, and I didn't have a place to like focus it in. And then I would do martial arts or karate or kung fu, and every time I'd get in trouble in school, my mom would immediately take me out of these activities, and that would just fuel my rage even more. Like, fucking A, man. I didn't have an outlet, and that was my outlet. My mom thought, to her credit, I would have thought so too as a parent, probably, that the martial arts were probably giving me more fire, to live down that path. Though it was doing quite the opposite. It was actually helping me control it. I'd go to the practice and I'd blow a lot of steam off. So when I didn't have those practices, I was a different person. It was just getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, yeah, because originally you tried out for the wrestling team, but I guess your grades weren't good enough to stay on the team.
Yeah. Once I got to high school, freshman year, I tried out for the wrestling team. I beat the guys that would have granted me the spot at 147 pounds, because there wasn't too many experienced guys at that weight, and the guys that were there, I could beat them. And I had the spot, and then we had to wait for the report card to come in. You had to have a 2.0 GPA, and I had like a 0.6. No, I'm sorry, 0.9 the first time when I applied for it. And then the coach is like, man, look, we got a whole other quarter for you to get to that 2.0. I tell you what, I never got to that 2.0, brother.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, man, I wrestled 1 year in high school, and it actually saved my life later on, because I was at a girl's house and a home invasion occurred. Like, her ex-boyfriend jumped in through the window in the middle of the night and attacked me.
Ooh.
And because my wrestling intuition kicked in, I was able to start wrestling with him, and I managed to get behind him and
Let's
catch
go.
him in a chokehold. And it was like,
If not, that could have been you under the knife.
I could have been dead, yeah. I mean, because he was saying he had a gun, he was ready to kill me. So I was really thinking I'm going to die tonight. And if it wasn't for that wrestling, being able to just maneuver around someone on the ground like that, I don't think I'd be alive today. So even a little bit of martial arts training could really go a long way in life.
Oh, a long, long way, and also just
Yeah.
the confidence that it could give you. as an individual. I'm sure after that you felt just so fucking amazing, you know?
Oh yeah, no, it changed my outlook on life at that point. Because that was the first day I thought I was really going to die for sure, and I managed to walk away from it. He didn't manage to walk away from it. They had to carry him out, but it is what it is. Okay, so from about 15 to 22, you were like semi-homeless, like sleeping in cars?
Not all the time, I'd stay at relatives' house, I'd stay at parents, my mom, a lot of friends' house, a lot of couch surfing, and then my car. And then from like I would say like 19 to 22 more, I was more on the grind. But I turned pro at 18, and between living at the gyms and people's places, that's what I was doing, But at the time, I was never like, I don't want anybody watching this to be like, oh my gosh, poor you, because I was never a victim. All of this was part of the process. I knew in the back of my mind, this is just part of the stage to get there, because yeah, I could afford a $800, $900 efficiency or something, but that would take away from the food, that would take away from the gear that I had to purchase. So in my mind, it was just like, man, I got a budget here and I got to stick to it for right now, but everything is going to pan out eventually. I just need training, because the more I was training, the better I was getting, the more confidence I was getting. As you said earlier, I had started out with like the street fights and stuff, so it was a lot about the grappling world and MMA in general that I just didn't know. So all that extra resources and money that I had was going to that, going to gym memberships, things like that,
Okay, because originally you started out with the street fights and the Kimbo Slice backyard fights.
Yes, sir.
So you were involved in that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shout out to rest
and
in
those
peace,
are really
Kimbo Slice.
brutal. I mean, you've seen some of these videos. You see guys' eyes hanging out and stuff like that. Like, how bad did those fights get?
Well, they're bare knuckles, so definitely more gory. You're gonna cut people more, you're gonna knock people more, your hands are a lot more likely to get shattered or something like that, But really the main difference between that and like MMA fights was obviously the skill level and the preparation that the pros had. But in the backyard days, it'd just be what could happen afterwards or during, if somebody's friend hit their entourage, brought a gun, brought a knife, if they were upset about the decision or how the fight went down, those would turn into problems. But skill-wise, there wasn't that many good guys. The guy that I fought, Ray, though, was actually pretty skilled, man. He obviously he knew how to throw hands. He knocked out numerous dudes in Kimbo's backyard, and they were definitely grooming him to be a crossover guy, somebody that could get a lot of views from him, because he was doing it, man. He was doing big, and he was, even out of the 20 years that I went pro, he was one of the toughest fights that I had, period. As far as power, he definitely fucking hit hard,
Yeah, and rest in peace, Kimbo Slice, man. Sure. He was definitely a star in that world, and he was making his way into the MMA world, and he definitely left way too early.
Way, way too early. One of the most humble human beings I ever met, too, in my life, man.
Okay, so in 2003, that's when you started your MMA career officially?
I think so, 2003, 2012, that's when I turned pro. Yes, sir.
Okay. And, this was before UFC. You're doing other leagues at this point.
Yeah, other leagues. UFC was already around, but I wasn't on their radar yet, So I was bouncing all over the place. I started in Florida, South Florida. 9 of my first bouts actually took place in this stadium in South Florida called the World Memorial. And then from there, I started bouncing all over the world. Literally, I went to Costa Rica, Russia, Japan. I went all over the world fighting, and then eventually this league that I was fighting for called Strikeforce, it was based out of California, and they had gotten bigger and bigger, and they had a lot of the best guys at my weight class. They had a deal with Japan where Japan had UFC had dropped the 155-pound division, and a lot of the best guys at 155 pounds and under were all over the world, were scattered between Japan and this league called Strikeforce. And I got picked up by them, and then eventually the UFC purchased this league and brought us over, and I was part of that merger.
Right, because you joined Strikeforce in 2007, but a year before your dad gets out of prison.
He gets out of jail right before I fought Yves Edwards, which was I was like 22 years old, something like that. I forget the year, but something like that, and that was one of like the best moments of my life, because I was fighting at the time in the rankings. I was like 100 and something, and now I was fighting number 3 in most people's ranking, as low as number 5. This guy was a worldwide fucking action star in the world of MMA. He had gone 6-0 in the UFC before the UFC dropped their 155-pound division. Now we were all guns for hire. fighting all over the world. And this guy kind of like let me know that, man, I could do this not only for the rest of my life, but with the best of the best, because this was the first time I was fighting somebody. I had trained with good people, but I had never competed against somebody in the top 20, let alone the top 5, you know? So this was the biggest milestone of my career at that moment. And my dad had just happened to get out as well.
And right, in 2007, you actually had a Strike Force event at the Playboy Mansion.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Where 1,000 people bought tickets for $1,000 a piece.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it was $1 million event.
Yes, sir. It was freaking.
I'm sure the eye candy was nice also around the way.
Man, you'd be surprised, man. I got duped on that, brother, you know? Because it was so many freaking dudes and like 10 girls, 11 girls. I was like, man, this sucks, you know? And to fight at the Playboy Mansion was obviously legendary and epic. I got to see the caves, underwater caves. I didn't get to go inside the house, but I got like a tour of outside of it, and it was pretty cool. But the party was, the ratio wasn't right, you know? But other than that, It was a great, great experience. I got an early knockout. I fought a very tough dude and knocked him out early, and I just continued my winning streaks.